For once, Nick and I are right on top of things as the 53-man roster is finalized, waiver claims are finalized, trades are finalized. Ryan, I swear, if you trade another player right now, just after this, between posting, I'm going to flip my lid. Nick and I can't wait to talk through the roster. Who made the cuts? Who didn't make the cuts? What's going on with Hard Knocks? What do we have to look forward to? Who's on the practice squad? And much, much more. We'll talk through it all on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of the Bears blog, right here with my co-host, Nick Whalen of Football Guys, as we try to bring you the best Bears podcast we possibly can, combining hard-hitting analysis and statistics to back up what we're talking about and all the other Football Guys stuff that you could possibly expect. But Nick, at the end of the day, how you doing? Because how we're doing drives a lot of this.
I feel good, man. I mean, we finally kind of know we don't have to speculate. And it really did stink because last episode we recorded and we had our predictions. And then all of a sudden we found out about the Ian Wheeler ACL. And we found out about surgery for Simba Webster. And then we heard about the Darrell Taylor trade, but now all of a sudden the Chris Williams trade happened. We're like, come on, Ryan, like our podcast stinks now. So I'm glad it's pretty concrete right now.
You know, it's funny though, because an overwhelming amount of the stuff that we talked about, look, we made jokes about the Colin Cowherd when Colin was right kind of thing. We got a ton of this. And the only one that I would say you and I quote unquote missed on, both of us having Ryan Bates on the Bears 53, we got claimed. So obviously our eyes were not deceiving us because the New York Jets agreed with you and me.
Man, I that is one I put a tweet out and I was like kicking rocks. I'm like, Brendan Bates, come on, like that's the guy to develop. But there's a few other ones too that I'm surprising. So I mean, we'll start off pretty easy, y'all. I mean, Caleb made the team.
Congratulations, Caleb Williams.
Rookie, first NFL team that he's made. Tyson Bagent made the team. Not a surprise there. Running backs, Bayless made it, if you want to call him a running back or a receiver. But I am surprised, Robert, Travis Homer made the team. And some of these guys are going to, depending on when people come back from IR or other people are healthy and they got to bring guys up because we can talk about some of that. But Travis Homer is one that I really didn't think was going to make this team.
I'm going to hit you with just a devastatingly honest take, Nick. Guys like you and me, we are always going to be biased towards what did you contribute on defense? What did you contribute on offense? Your stated position, how well do you play it? And there is no chance Travis Homer made this team as a running back. He made this team as a special teamer. Like I said, devastatingly honest. I like to play the middle on most of my opinions. Bears fans, I want you guys to hear from somebody who at least is trying to be grounded. And I would tell you with a straight face that if I needed 1 yard, I would rather hand the ball to Velus than I would Travis Homer. Not because Velus is some power runner, but because I think Velus offers more with the ball in his hand right now than Travis Homer does. And I don't think that Travis did anything during all the preseason games that he played in, of which he played in all of them, to prove that statement wrong, which is a little alarming because you don't want like a gadget receiver to be a more attractive ball in hand option than one of your actual running backs, especially, dude, when he costs like $2 million. But
right.
Ryan Poles likes him. He comes from where Shane Waldron is. For all we know, he's the, you know what I'm talking about when I say every time you see a team hire an offensive coordinator, they always tend to bring in like one receiver that played in that offense to teach the rest of the receivers how to play in that offense. For Getsy, it was Equanimeous St. Brown, like that kind of player, right? And Homer feels like maybe there's an element of he's got Waldronisms, but it's got to mostly be special teams, right? Right?
Well, yeah, and didn't Chad Morton come from Seattle? So like he's super familiar with Travis Homer too. So that has to be part of it. But you watched Hard Knocks, Robert. I watched Hard Knocks. Most of our listeners did. Dude, heartbroken. You knew it was happening with Ian Wheeler because watching the game, I didn't see the injury, but watching it through Hard Knocks, seeing him and his mom embrace, I'm heartbroken. But then the conversation Poles had with him tells me that we were right in that they were at least considering him for the 53 and practice squad. Um, and that might have been the deciding factor whether Travis Homer is making this team or not was Ian Wheeler getting injured.
First off, I agree with you, especially in principle. I also wouldn't be surprised, truly. I mean, Homer did not make the team because they needed four running backs. At least I don't think so, right? They're playing Bayless pretty heavily at running back
Or
right
you
now.
mean 5?
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, yes, you're right. Yes. They didn't need four running backs or plus Bayless, blah 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 blah. I'm probably still getting the numbers wrong. All this to say, Nick, that I don't know if Wheeler fully displaces Homer. It wouldn't, but I definitely think that Wheeler was in that top 57 guys. Like whether
Yeah.
he was in the
Yep.
last four in or the last or the first four out, whatever you call it,
Yep.
he's in that category. I'm really curious as to what he gets paid on the injured reserve for the entire season. Does he get a year's salary? Does he get practice squad money? He has to get some level of stipend, right? I mean, he's
Right.
still
Yeah.
with the team. He's still going to
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah, there's something. Well, I mean, and they're gonna pay for his surgery and his rehab as they should. So yeah, he's getting paid. The guys on IR and practice squad and 53 all count against your cap. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but they do count against it.
And if they do, I would assume you're getting paid that money, right?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, again, look, I have never made $600,000 in a year. So the idea of making even potentially 900,000 boggles my mind. What would I do for $900,000? Well, I don't know if I would tear my own ACL, but if Ian Wheeler is getting paid a full year's salary, Nick, because again, speculating, I don't know, at least you got that going for you, right?
Did you no, I agree with you. Did you hear Chad Morton say you run a 4.3? Because remember you were talking about his
Mhm.
speed, and I heard that,
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, I
I
didn't
was
know
trying to
he
tell
had
you,
that kind of
he's
juice."
really fast. When
Yeah.
I was telling you that he was mowing through people 3 weeks ago, that's because he was the fast guy. Like
Right.
or reports out of camp where this is the quick one. So the fact that he ran
Mhm.
with power too, I was like, do we have a two type runner here? That's
Right.
pretty nasty.
Mhm.
So we'll see if he can end up being. God, you remember Zach Stacy from back in the day? He was a
I love Zach Stacy out of it. Well, okay, I've been doing this a long time, Robert. We always talk about that, right? Okay.
mhm.
I liked Zach Stacy out of Vanderbilt. Okay. I again, y'all, we're not. I don't like what Zach Stacy did as an individual.
Mm-mm,
There's an
mm-mm.
incident. I don't like that part of it. But as a running back out of Vanderbilt, I liked him. You know who else I liked out of college?
Who?
I actually liked Travis Homer at Miami. And it never came about. But he was a he's more of like an athlete than he is a running back, which I think
Right.
helps the special teams part. Um, but if we move on, because the three tight ends, we know who those are.
We do.
Bates, they let go, stupidly got claimed. The only cut that got claimed, I think, speaks to the value that we saw. I mean, obviously, polls and them probably saw it too. But wide receiver, Robert.
Can we
Okay,
talk about the tight end thing very quickly?
yeah, go ahead, whatever you want.
I want to just make sure it is stated on this podcast. And sure, Nick, I'll be the one to state it.
Sure.
That one of the things I am really excited about is that we can button up the 53 and move on. Because this season, I think sometimes we could talk so much about the 53-man roster, Nick, that we bury the lead. That if Brandon Bates got into a game, that would have already been a problem. Like we're looking at a season where you really want more, way more obviously out of the top 35 players, then you're going to be thinking about the next 18 after that. And
Oh
I
yeah.
know it's football. You want to make sure that you have proper depth up and down the roster because injuries happen. I'm not trying to take away from any of that, Nick. It's more to say that on one hand, I agree with you. We already mentioned this, that Brandon Bates is somebody that I would have kept onto the roster. But at the same time, I'm not going to lose sleep over losing him either because now you've got a couple other options like Tommy Sweeney, like the other tight end whose name escapes me. I think it's Stephen Carlson,
Steve
where
Carlson, yeah, who's on the practice squad. They got him.
and if you absolutely needed a fourth tight end, you just have a guy now on your practice squad that you'll be able to elevate and he can
Right.
handle his business at the position, even if he's not an all-star about it. That's it's the same thing as a room that we're about to talk about here, whether you want to talk about wide receiver or offensive line, where, yes, on one hand, I am surprised that the Bears kept so many offensive linemen, but also if we see Doug Kramer or Bill Murray in a real NFL game, I'm going to be worried regardless of whether that was Colbert playing, regardless of whether they'd picked up Ricky Stromberg. Like it, you know what I'm saying? Where it's like you get that far down the roster and you go, I don't really want to see you on the field regardless.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the Bates thing too also, so, I mean, shout out Kristen Tanis, on Twitter. Awesome, brings so many facts, which
Hmm.
the people I like to follow on Twitter, I learned something from, and she
Yep.
she is awesome. She brought up, I didn't know this, Bates was leading the team in special teams tackles, which I think adds to the value. So, I mean, with that kickoff rule, those linebacker, small D ends, which we'll get to that part, and tight ends, I thought more of those guys would make the roster to fill out that kickoff, kick return type mold. But yeah, if we just shift to offensive line, as you're talking about, um, there's some reasons here. And Poles' press conference today, he talked about, he's like, I've never had a line this deep. He's actually one of the guys we had to let go. He's like, yeah, we're just really good up front. And just overall Bears fans, okay? I know we've gone through it together. The Nate Davis stuff is kind of, a little bit of thing of the a couple weeks ago, past now or past that, and worried about the interior and all this kind of stuff. The Bears line and depth, we should feel good about. And some of the guys that we actually heard some stuff on. So like Ryan Bates is going through a shoulder right now, didn't practice today, but he was kind of out there, I think, moving around, which is a good sign. I think the reason you kept Bill Murray and um, Doug Kramer is because you need someone who can snap the football, right? Because Ryan Bates isn't going to be ready for week one, is what it looks like. So I think those two guys are there for sure for that reason. The one thing I'm very curious, your opinion on, Robert, is one guy we talked about, I thought for sure was gone, and that's Larry Borum. And Larry Borum didn't make the 53, but he was put on short term IR, and he had the salary of it was like 3.19, and it was designated to return, which makes it odd to me because for tackle, you've got the two guys. You've got Karan Amagaji. They actually put Jake Curran on practice squad, so it's still available to you. Like you got all these options. Why do you put Larry Borum on short-term IR?
So when we watch the tape, obviously Larry Borum is not playing especially great football, right? Very similar to Jatiri Carter, who was waived, and then he chose to sign with not the Bears, which is actually something I think you and I talked about on the podcast, that it's not talked about often that you can cut a guy in cutting him, piss him off, and end up losing
Yes.
him, not because you didn't want him back on your practice squad, because he doesn't want to be there anymore.
Did you see where he went?
Did he go to Carolina?
He went to Carolina.
Like everybody else right now. If you can believe it, I have like 10 to 15 likes that are pouring in on a couple of Jatiri Carter posts I have on Twitter from like last preseason, where I keep getting likes and I'm like, who are these people? It's another Panthers fan. Huh.
I hope that kid that makes all the music videos uses one of your tweets in his video.
Oh my god. Be hilarious. But so I say all this because it's it's interesting watching the way this is constructed. One thing I do think is interesting about Bill Murray. Do you know anything about the guy?
Bill, yeah, from New England, pretty versatile. I see the thing that bugs me is I thought he has a little center experience. So to me, I was like, well, do we actually need Kramer for sure or not? Am I wrong on that?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I really couldn't. It's funny because like when I look up Bill Murray, I see that he is Pro Football Reference has him listed as a D tackle. Was he a D tackle at some point?
He may have in college. Actually, you know what's funny? I mean, I work in a school, y'all. Okay. One of my coworkers, like you come back from the summer, they say something interesting. They said that they met Bill Murray's son was like their interesting fact of the summer. So that part's going through my mind right now. I was like, well, my world's kind of coming together right here.
All I think all I'm getting at, because at the end of the day, I'm realizing. So, for instance, I had seen an ESPN blip that confused me. If I could be honest with you guys, where it said Bill Murray experience. This is his first season. You mentioned he's 3 seasons with the Patriots. So, like we're mentioning, he's 27. But for as often as the general rule of if you haven't heard of him, there's probably a good reason why applies. It also wouldn't surprise me, Nick, if 27, which is typically the peak or the peak year of an offensive lineman's athleticism meets his technique, we could see a player that's ascending at the right time. It's actually not that unthinkable when it comes to an offensive lineman. But what's up?
All right, so here's the background. Bill Murray, okay, at William and Mary, was a 3-year defensive line starter, and then signed with the Patriots, UDFA, and switched from offense from defensive tackle to guard in 20 the summer of 2022.
Okay.
So he's
So
brand
then
new to this.
so he then played guard in fall of 22. He
Mhm.
played guard again through 2023, and this would be effectively I mean, not to, be overly optimistic here, Nick, but this would be his first season where he should be any good at all at offensive line. So,
Yep.
in a weird way, you get the Patriots Rashad Coward project right as you should be able to see the results. And the Bears seem to like those results. Bringing this back to Larry Borum. Kramer's inclusion on the 53 reminds me a lot of last year's inclusion on the 53, where I can't help feeling like Kramer is on this roster to hold the spot for somebody else, whether that's Borum, whether that's a cut or a wave. I really couldn't tell you. Just that I don't think the Bears need 3 centers and also Bill Murray on the roster all at the same time, and 10 linemen is truly an awful lot. I've seen teams carry as few as 8, often 9, et cetera, et cetera. Borum could easily just be, Nick, that the Bears are very in their own head about what if all our tackles get hurt. We have Caleb Williams at quarterback. We need veterans that can protect him, that know this offense, because we want, like Caleb just said on the radio earlier today, and Poles echoed it too, the Bears want Caleb to play point guard. The Bears don't want Caleb to be or to have to be Superman, to put on the cape, as he used to talk about it at USC. So maybe part of this is all part of the plan to keep Caleb within himself, but we would have to ask and probably frankly add a little truth serum to our question
Right.
if we wanted to get a
Well,
real answer.
I mean, to me, like, if I thought about this just from backing away a little bit, not getting into the details. If you asked Bears fans, or anyone, it doesn't have to be a fan, I guess. I mean, experts, whatever. Okay, what are 2 concerns you have about the Bears 2024 season? They'd be like offensive line, defensive line. And what did the Bears do? They kept more guys at those 2 positions, those groups, than any other position group. Now I know people are like, well, yeah, because you have 5 linemen. I get it, but you kept 10. We don't normally keep 10. And we're going to talk about DNs here in a bit. We kept 6 and 4 D tackles, which is more than we normally do. So maybe they're like, hey, those are the 2 that we're not completely sure on. So we're going to keep more there so we can band-aid any issues that happen because we feel good about our other spots.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I would love to say with certainty one thing or another, but it doesn't help anything that the Bears have near 14 days to figure out what the tenor of their roster is really going to look like before they line up in week 1. And they don't even get to dress everybody. So it
Right.
could just be that they thought they had a whole bunch of guys. It's not long ago that they drafted Zach. It was Zach Martin,
Yeah,
right?
no, so Zach Taylor, we already did Zach Taylor,
Thank you.
Zachary Taylor,
I thought I know
or
one of
no,
them.
no, Zach Thomas.
Thomas, thank you. I'm
Yep.
sitting there like, I think both of these are Hall of Famer names. Like, as I
Yeah, yeah,
sit and mull it over, right? But so they drafted Zach Thomas. They had him on the practice squad. He got poached off the practice squad. They lost him for nothing.
yep,
They may feel like they have a bunch of linemen that are at about that caliber, where they're like,
yeah,
as soon as we cut these guys, we're going to lose them. But so why would we do that? But we would have to ask polls, and you don't even necessarily know if he's right. I mean,
yeah,
as the funny part about this is that Bears fans, we love this team. We are tied up with this roster. We know this roster's stories with Hard Knocks. We know them better than usual across the roster. We never would have found out that Valus Jones has a ferret or had a ferret, for instance. But now we know. And thank you, Hard Knocks, for that. But it's funny, Nick, because all the other teams across the NFL could easily be looking at the Bears saying, "Why are they keeping 10 bad linemen?" The same way that I look at Carolina's receiver room and say, "Why do they keep drafting Jonathan Mingo over and over and over?" Like they drafted Terrence Marshall, then they drafted Jonathan Mingo, cutting Terrence Marshall after they drafted Xavier Leggett. It's like,
Right,
guys,
right,
what are we doing? And then on
right.
the other hand, you've got Detroit, and they're bringing in every single injured and desiccating receiver that should not be in the NFL anymore, and they're stashing them all on their practice squad. For those who did not notice, Tim Patrick of the Broncos, who cannot stay healthy, and Allen Robinson of the of the Bears to the Steelers to the Rams to the Giants. He's now a Detroit Lions practice squatter. Like it is so funny. I think, Nick, the clarity that you can sometimes have looking at other fan bases that with us, we go, yeah, but all these guys are good. And I'm
Right.
sure there's some bias
What
there.
it feels different because I mean I feel really good about the team and the depth versus what we've had the past few years when we're not being like, well, Alex Leatherwood was a first round pick and he could like we were doing those debates and we're not doing that now. The other thing
Right.
before we move on, because this is a shorter episode, y'all. Um, the Bears did on the practice squad. I mentioned Jake Curran is on there, but also Theo Benedict. So the Canadian Eagle is going to be on the practice squad as well as Larry Borum on the short-term IR. So the Bears are bulked up at O-line, transitioning to receiver. We knew the top four. And my
Yeah.
prediction, now again, initially it was Simba Webster, okay, y'all. But after I found that when I put out my next prediction on the 53, I hit my fifth one. And they kept DeAndre Carter.
I want to act like either of us deserve credit because on DBB on Monday, I also assumed it would be Carter, but the
Mhm.
Bears didn't have any other choices.
Nope.
Carter was the only receiver left in the building that has caught a punt and also muffed one. We're not going to talk about it. Uh, like
That's
he's
not a muff. That's not a muff, is it?
that's totally a muff.
A
Like
muff is through your hands.
I guess I feel like anytime the returner is the reason that the opponent got the ball again, I'm calling it a muff.
Let, let
But
me let me make you worry about him returning punts, but also give you some satisfaction, Robert. Okay. So he's
what?
returned. Let me look here.
Like,
He's
you're already talking about a player that I'm mad is on the roster.
oh, I
So,
know. I
like
know. Yeah. No, yeah. Are you the only one? No way.
I
That's why
doubt
that's why
it.
we have the podcast. People want to hear this stuff. Okay. DeAndre Carter, he's old, y'all, 31. He's at 132 career punt returns. That's not just fair catching. So there's a lot more beyond that. Um, he has 17 career fumbles. Okay.
That's a
Now
massive percentage.
he's recovered four of them.
That's bad.
Last last year, he had two fumbles, but recovered both of them. So he didn't lose any of them last year, Robert.
You really are making me feel worse.
That's my good news to you. I don't know that all these are punt returns. I don't know all that stuff. There could be because he's had carries, he's had receptions and stuff like that too. I mean, that's the other part too, y'all. I mean, he had 538 receiving yards 2 years ago in
it's
LA. So there's some other facets to his game that I think don't get enough credit here.
it is always much easier to talk about adding another player than it is to actually do it. For those who have never thought about this, which I would hope is none of you, but for all I know, this could easily be a couple. Type in the comments if this was one of you. Adding a player means teaching them your entire offense, means getting them on schedule with your, remember, rookie quarterback, means helping your quarterback understand how they get in and out of breaks. Now, your quarterback has to own a little bit of getting them lined up in the huddle. Things like, hey, Caleb, where do I line up again? And you go 2 yards off the ball right outside the numbers. We've talked about this. These are things that happen on the football field. And especially if you watch any rep that involved Velus Jones over his rookie and second season, you will see a lot of this as Justin and the rest of the receivers were constantly telling Velus where to line up, and you
Yeah.
could see it on tape. I digress. The point is that what bums me out about Michael Carter is with Pettis on IR and
DeAndre Carter.
DeAndre Carter, thank you. Michael's the running back. I should know better. Anyways, so what bums me out about that is with Pettis on IR and with with Webster ending up also on IR. Like,
Yeah, he had a surgery. I don't know what it was
yeah,
for.
I know he
I
got
am bummed about
surgery.
Pettis because that's 2 years in a row Pettis had to go to IR, which sucks
Yeah,
for him.
which has been part of the problem with why he struggled to stay on a roster. But you ended up with no other choice. I mean,
Yep.
you. I really hope that Rome doesn't actually return punts because that's where we're headed. Where Rome is the best punt returner on the roster by virtue of nobody else being any better. I mean, we are trying everybody. They're about to hold an open tryout to see if the fans can return punts. It
I kinda
feels
like
like.
Josh Blackwell.
Did he remind me, did he drop one just the other day? Like I could have sworn we saw Blackwell, but then like a bad thing happened. And it
Oh,
wasn't smooth or good. But I can't remember. I wasn't that focused. So
yeah.
maybe Blackwell can do it. But Michael Carter is again, DeAndre Carter is the kind of player that I'm just going to hold my nose and look beyond it
Right.
because he won't be in the game unless the Bears have a specific role for him, like catching a punt, and that's enough for me.
Yeah. Um, other, ideas, y'all. So Samari Torrey is from Green Bay coming to Chicago. Talented young kid. I
He
mean,
can
he's got a
actually
little
kind
bit
of
of
play.
size.
The receiver, they there's something in the water in Green Bay with these receivers because they really are picking all the good ones. It feels
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not a bad practice squad guy to bring on. Also to learn their playbook. I'm not, above
Hey,
that.
that's part
But
of the game.
also,
They're scouting
well,
referees. They're
yeah.
definitely asking about playbooks of divisional opponents.
Right, right. But, another guy that I'm surprised, I mean, could eventually end up on the practice squad maybe, would be Dwayne Eskridge. So Dwayne Eskridge went to Western Michigan, second round pick to Seattle, has history with Shane Waldron and this offense. So he's a little bit of a smaller guy, not a punt returner, can do kick returns, but has some athleticism. Didn't really pan out on that second round draft grade. But if you're looking for someone to replace Carter, if you find a punt returner or just a sixth receiver, just keep your eye out. That could be a guy to add later on.
Okay, did we ever figure out what happened to Ricky Stromberg?
I thought he was injured. That's why he got cut.
So he got cut, but what I'm trying to ask about is then what? Did he? I assume he didn't get claimed, but he's gonna have practice squad eligibility. So I'm just interested to see what happens there. I mean, maybe this is just look. Most analysis comes from your draft priors. Can we just be real about that?
Yeah.
I liked Stromberg coming out of Arkansas. I feel like the Bears were probably in on Stromberg before he ultimately got drafted a little ahead of when they were going to draft. So I don't know if anything's in the cards, but especially if the Bears could offer him a decent sum to be on their practice squad, that would absolutely be the kind of guy that I don't think you can hand him a roster spot tomorrow just because he hasn't proven enough and you've got 10 guys that have, but somebody who you could add to the practice squad, give him an opportunity to work his way onto the roster ASAP. I mean, it's somebody that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, if people don't remember Ricky Stromberg, so third round center, I think he got overdrafted a little bit, Robert. I think we were thinking of him maybe round four, round five, 2 years ago, the 2023 draft, but undersized a little bit, but also very athletic. So he's really good with the zone scheme. If you're looking outside zone, he's going to be kind of the center for you.
and like you're talking about, when you like a guy, you gotta pay more for him than you want to. And I mean, sometimes I think we all do this, right? Where sometimes you've got the peace of mind or the presence of mind to catch yourself in getting over infatuated with the player. I realize that people are going to be way too high on Luke Musgrave and Dalton Kincaid right before it happened. Dalton Kincaid ends up being a first rounder. Luke Musgrave ends up being a high second rounder. And Kincaid's really good. Don't get me wrong. The Bills are going to pump every ounce of value that they can out of him because they are treating him like a receiver, which is about
Mhm.
what you'd have to do if you're going to draft a guy like that. But Musgrave, ROI on him's looking rough at the moment. And that's because, like you're talking about, sometimes you overdraft a guy like Juice Scruggs in the second round, where it's like, I
Yes.
like him. Is that where we had to take him? But
Right.
that's a conversation better had nearer to draft season. We've
Yeah.
got 24 or 25 more guys to cover on the defense, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I have to, if you want to talk about one thing to pat your back on, okay, I'm going to pat my back on predicting the Bears keeping 60 ends. Okay. I may not have had six correct, but the idea of keeping more DNs frees up Walker to play a lot more three tech D tackle. and because we're concerned about Pickens, which I've heard is a groin, didn't practice again today. Um, so, but they kept actually 7 DNs, y'all. So we know Sweat, okay. We know Walker because he'll play inside, but also as a D end. Taylor, the trade Booker. They kept Dominic Robinson, which some people are very upset by, but I keep reminding people that he's the only D end
Mhm.
outside of the starters that weighs above 255 pounds. Because I thought Taylor was 263, but you had told me that he was down what they're hoping 255, 250. So you have to have some kind of beef. And Dom Rob was up to 273. And then you have Hardy made the roster, which I think some people were very excited about. But then I was surprised and happy. And I think money is a part of this because over half his salary is already guaranteed. Is Jake Martin made short term IR?
I did think it was really funny, by the way, when we saw that he was on IR, and I was like, "They're not done with him yet."
Yeah,
Nick's
yeah,
still got his Jake Martin agenda ready
yep,
to roll.
yep.
So I'm interested because, to your point, if they bring him off of IR, so as I understand the IR rule, this is where you need to correct me. They do not have to add him to the roster. They basically can wait until Jake Martin is ready to roll, give him a 2 week period of practice, and then they have to make the designation of whether he's on the roster or not. That's the case, right?
I thought it was okay. Is it 2 weeks? Because the pup the pup is they get a month. Is that correct?
I couldn't
Well,
tell
one of
you.
them I thought was they have more than 2 weeks to determine whether practice whether they're healthy enough or they can just put them on long term IR. But I agree with you. There is a time frame there, and d- so I just talked about this with tight ends, y'all. The let's look at Hardy. Okay, very athletic,
Hmm.
6'2", 240, basically a linebacker who rushes the passer really well. Perfect for special teams too. So like I don't know if that's part of why, but also let Walker go inside. But I just love that the idea of keeping more DNs, knowing that it's a trouble spot. I just think it's a great move by the organization.
I like the element of waves on waves of pass rushers. I think it is a little more theoretical here than it is executed, just because Dev or Austin Booker and oh my gosh, it's Darrell Taylor.
Yeah, it's Darrell.
There's enough of these new guys that are on the roster all of a sudden where it's like, okay, gotta make sure I got the names right. Thank you. But so I think Darrell Taylor has juice. Austin Booker has juice. Dom Rob can at least set an edge against a second string offensive tackle.
Mhm.
Daniel Hardy is a motor workhorse with a couple of moves that are probably closer to C plus, maybe B minus, maybe a B at his absolute best. But I say all this not to hate on the dudes. It's more to say nobody's 60 ends deep. If you were, you trade one of them. Hence how you get Montez Sweat and Chase Young traded in the same in-season deadline deal. Point being that I think it's a special teams thing. I think it is getting we see less receivers on this roster, which is usually where you'd see a whole lot of gunners, and we see more of these mid-sized movers, defensive ends that could play what do they call it? Small forward? Yeah, small forward on a like on a basketball court. Or let me see. Point guard, shooting guard. What's the one in the middle? The three?
Yeah, that's small forward and
Thank you.
power forward.
Okay.
The two.
That I get those confused a lot. Sorry.
Mhm.
All this to say that I think a Hardy type makes a lot of sense for special teams. I think it's fun that they kept them all. The Pickens stuff, if we can move to defensive tackle,
Sure. Yeah.
has me really cocking my head, wondering what the Bears are going to do at defensive tackle. Because if Zach Pickens has a groin injury, which is at least the reports that we've got right now, that's not that easy an injury to just sit out practice for and then wake up one day and you're good to go. Like,
Well, well, you know who else had a groin injury that people weren't happy about this training camp?
was Nate
Nate Davis.
right? And it took him
So
weeks. It took
yeah.
him weeks.
Yep, and then
So
there's a setback, and then yeah, he's back. Yep.
while I appreciate that the Bears made a trade for Chris Williams, who has scraped and scrapped to be on practice squads at all, over or to be on rosters and practice squads since Matt Eberflus had a hand in bringing him to the league in 2020, the Bears are dangerously close to rolling into week one with 3 defensive tackles if things don't progress for Zach Pickens. So I have to think that they have their eye on a more minor guy to bring in. No, I'm not talking about DeForest Buckner or anything fun. Unfortunately, I think that the Bears made their trades for now, and
Mhm.
anything exciting would have to wait until the deadline. But I'm
Well,
really
well,
interested to see what they do at DT.
well, they've already made some moves. So first off, we didn't talk about Chris Williams. I think that's worth a discussion. So people are
Hmm.
familiar. They gave up a pick. He'll be on the team for this year.
Yep,
Um, So I have a really good friend, Jake Burns. He does a lot of film work with the Cleveland Browns. He was actually just on the Mina Kimes show, which I was like,
that's
oh,
awesome.
dude, my boy. So as soon as the trade happened, I just texted him. I'm like, hey, what can you tell me about this guy? And he's like, man, I wish we kept him. He looks a lot better this preseason. Um, he called him like a poor version of Demarcus Walker, which I put on Twitter, and people are like, man, Walker's already bad. I'm like, if Walker's bad, you guys need to get a grip of what a really, really bad D end is. But um, he kind of said that in terms of Walker, but he also said that they tried him at D end some. So if you're looking at this like tweener big D end, me and Robert have references as like
Right.
the elephant end, or this kind of smaller three tech D tackle, Williams and Walker are kind of the same thing. So, if some of these guys come off of IR, Robert, and they're not great on special teams, and let's say it's Dom Rob and you let him go, and you find another D tackle you're okay with, I could see Williams and Walker kind of playing both spots if you need them to, which is kind of interesting. But he said he liked him. He's more of he can't play, two or two I or a one tech. He's really going to be a three tech,
Right.
but because he's lighter, he's like 285.
That's the piece of this Bears defense that I'm most concerned about at this point, right? I would love to tell you it's pass rusher, but to exactly to the point you just made, dude, Miles Garrett does not grow on trees, and that's the standard. The craziest thing I think about defensive end, okay, Daniel Hardy's probably my favorite example. If you transposed Daniel Hardy into a wide receiver, you've got a hardworking wide receiver 3 or 4 that can play a role and contribute for you a little bit. I bet you could think of all kinds of them, right? The
Yep.
Noah Browns, the Isaiah Hodges types, and they're useful. But in defensive end, the difference between what it looks like to be really dominant at this position and what it looks like to not be that guy is so visibly obvious, it
Yep.
can be a little jarring. Would
Yep.
you agree with that? Like,
Well, yeah, because I think Hardy's athletic, and I'm rooting for him, and he's done some good stuff. So I hope people
absolutely.
don't think that, but he's not going up against Trent Williams, who Trent Williams will make him look so bad at the edge, which by the way is a holdout, which is very interesting. Um, the other guy to talk about, which you didn't bring up, is Sam Roberts. So Sam Roberts is a guy that's going to go on the practice squad
Hmm.
that they're apparently going to bring up from the Patriots to the Week One roster because I think Pickens isn't going to
Probably
dress.
because Pickens isn't going to dress. Yeah.
Yeah. But also I'm a little perplexed, Robert, because from what I've read, Roberts is more of a three tech D tackle who struggles against double teams. They said he's better this year. He actually just had his best preseason game, which I assume is against threes and fours, but and still got cut. And they were mad he didn't return back. But I wanted a beef guy. I know he's 6'5. They say 300. He's actually a little bit more of like a 290, but I wanted a nose tackle because that's what we need. We need another nose tackle because if Billings goes down, Robert, we are in deep, deep trouble.
So the untold story, as I have seen it, this is totally just my opinion, Nick. But based on what we've seen from the preseason, the most under-discussed part of this Bears defense is that the Bears very clearly think that Gervon Dexter can play both one tech and three tech, and they
Yeah.
intend to use it. So
Yeah.
it seems as if the Bears want to play Billings at one tech, Gervon at three tech, maybe bump them based on what opposing personnel is doing, but then pull Billings off the field, have Dexter slide over to one tech and bring on a three tech to bring more juice to the play, while
Yep.
Javon rushes much like he did at Florida against the center and against the guard, which interestingly enough is where you and I thought he'd be best at rushing. Whatever. We all move on. We all move on, right?
Right.
But
Right.
Point being that I think the thought is that if Billings goes down, Dexter becomes the one tech. And
Right.
so they're just playing both of their one techs on the field at the same time right now. I'm with you. I want a beef guy. I'm more saying that the Bears clearly either don't see it like we do, or, and this might be more likely, Nick, I would tell you that there is one cardinal sin amongst most football teams, and it is what makes teams, it's what gets teams in trouble in terms of wins and losses more than anything. Do you want to guess what that is as it pertains to Zach Pickens?
Um, well, I was gonna go there too light on the defensive box. That's what I was gonna say. Wait.
Yes, but it's not everybody, right? Plenty of teams fail for plenty of reasons. But Zach Pickens is probably the only example on the Bears' current roster of the biggest role on the team filled with somebody who has it because of draft status or has it
Oh,
because
I
of a
see.
reason that might not be merit, right?
Mhm.
And that's not me hating on Zach. I liked Zach coming out of the Senior Bowl. I thought he was more of a three technique, but playing him at one technique reads to me as we picked you at 64 last year. I can't just not give you a role. This is the only role on the team. You're going to have to do this.
Yeah.
And generally, those kinds of miscastings, or especially, let's say, the people who are playing because their money says they should and not because their
Yep.
skill says they should, tend to be, in my experience, the difference in the fourth quarter,
Well,
right?
it's sunken cost fallacy is kind of what we're going into. It's,
Hmm.
you're, well, we did this, we have to do like it's more of like you buy the golf clubs for a lot of money and you don't really love golf. You're like, man, I feel like I have to use them, like you're wasting your time and you're trying to justify things. But um
It's how Jamal Adams gives up another big touchdown in the third
yeah,
quarter and flips a game. It's how a big time receiver that got paid a whole lot of money and then kind of disappears ends up taking up way more snaps than he should. It propagates across the NFL, right?
well, but
Deshaun
I
Watson in Cleveland is going to have a hard time getting benched, and dude, he is trying to get benched right now.
it's
Like,
not going
it
well,
is a massive mess, and he's still going to start games because his money says he should. But
right?
so,
The
yeah.
the other part of it, though, Robert, is like Roberts, more of a three tech. Pickens should be a three tech. We're going through this. When we say that, y'all, they're more slim, quicker type guys instead of those. My old school
Behemoths.
Bears guys will, Keith Trailer, Ted Washington. I mean, the newer age would be Anthony Adams. Like so that type of player. But if you look at the new age NFL, defensive linemen, linebackers are getting thinner and thinner and more athletic and more athletic. And part of that is pass rush. Part of that is they're not two gapping as much as they are shooting gaps. And part of that is the zone scheme is so big in the NFL. So if you are big, they're just going to run around you. But if you're quicker, now all of a sudden that's why Sean McVay is going more this gap scheme. And you look at Green Bay, Josh Jacobs is better at gap scheme, kind of going downhill with duo. So it's a cat and mouse game. I think part of it could be that too, Robert, where it's like, hey, we're going to try and get more downhill, more pass rush. So if we can't get amazing DNs, maybe we'll get more of these penetrating type D tackles and generate some rush.
Hopefully, there is an element. I don't want to be this guy, Nick. We don't need to be alarmist. Where part of the reason the Bears defense worked like it did last year is because they are nails against the run. At least they
Mhm.
were last year. And so with Jonathan Jones out, first of all, right now in the preseason, Javon Dexter looks like he should be able to wear Jonathan Jones' role.
Justin,
Justin, thank you. I'm really not good with first names today.
I don't know
Thank you
what's
for
going on
this.
with you today, man.
Dude, anyways, it's a long day at work, I guess. But so, Justin Jones' role was like a 550 snap role where Justin turned in maybe 150 really bad snaps, but that's still like 400 good snaps that your three tech was giving you. And it sure seems as if Javon Dexter should be able to wear that role. That's
Mm,
good. That's really good from what we've seen in the preseason. But Nick, it does kind of feel like the Bears are right now. The 2024 Bears are pulling a 2019 Bears, where they overemphasize the kicker position. Here, they're overemphasizing how do we get after the passer, and I do hope that they don't unintentionally give up 5.5 yards a carry in the process because
right.
that'll compromise the entire integrity of the defense. Thankfully, we have TJ Edwards. What a segue, am I right? And
There you
Jack
go.
Sanborn, and it seems like a sort of renewed effort from Tremaine Edmonds in terms of how he's. My favorite part about how they're using Edmonds, is that they're basically just not asking him to play the run. It's as if they said, just don't do it. We know you hate it.
Yep.
Just play as if every down is play
Sure.
action and chase the play. We're going to have TJ just go boss the wall and get downhill, bust through the
Mhm.
gap
He's so
and do
underrated.
damage. So we got 5 linebackers on the team. I don't feel like there's much to say here because this is the 5 that you and I went. If there's only 5, it's these 5, and it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Sewell's the only one 'cause of draft capital, and I think some guaranteed money. He didn't make it despite being injured most of it. Some people wanted Micah Baskerville. He made practice squad, y'all. Some people had mentioned Carl Jones. I believe Bigsy did actually, because of special teams, but he's also on the practice squad. So you really have kept all the guys that you really care about anyway. You can promote them if you need to.
Yep. Then we move on to corner, and it's another cash money group. I mean, you what did you think about the Ready Stewart thing?
I mean, it's tough to have keep a third nickel. Like, it
Yep.
just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I love having a developmental guy, but also Blackwell and Jones and Terrell Smith, they're all developmental guys that have been there a little bit longer. Um, but we have Reddy Stewart on the practice squad, so he's developing some interesting other guys on there though, Robert. Um, Tavares Moore, I didn't know that we were going to be able to bring him back, so I'm glad. Um, Roy Torrance, but also an old name. Quindell Johnson's back. So I don't know. Maybe he missed us, right? Because that was the 7th round draft pick, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, cool. We brought him back. So also we forgot, besides Sam Roberts on D tackle, um, Deshaun Mallory is on the practice squad. Jamry Krama, right? And then actually the one that people had on the 53, a lot of people, Brian Coward is back on the practice squad. So to me, that's good. The guys that know the system already, and a lot of times that's who ends up on your practice squad because they want to learn something whole new. But if hey, injury bug hits, we have guys that know the coaches, know the
Yep.
facility, know everything. So I feel pretty good about it. We didn't mention Austin Reed is on the practice squad. So
We didn't, and I think that that's incredibly exciting for Austin, truly.
mhm.
I mean,
Western
I
Kentucky.
Western Kentucky, I have no problem with a young set of quarterbacks. Truly, I think that developing quarterbacks is a lost art. And if anything, Nick, I am only going to say this one time. I'm never going to address this again. Okay? Maybe the Bears are considering that Tyson might be outgrowing his role. And that while he's outstandingly cheap, maybe the Bears got a couple calls that got him thinking about what Tyson's future may look like in another uniform for a price. Again, we're never going to address this again. But if they were going to do that, they would need a different young backup that's ideally a UDFA. And so maybe they think Reed can be that guy. I'm actually a little surprised that they didn't try to house a Brett Rippon or a Nathan Peterman type that would just be the veteran quarterback in the room. But the Bears have enough quarterback coaches that they probably think that one of their quarterback coaches, of which I believe there's 3 quarterback specific coaches, can fill that role just fine. So
Mhm.
we'll see. One thing that I do want to mention here is for as much as I know plenty of people loved Reddy Stewart, who, like you're saying, nickel corner, hard to roster 3 of them. He did push somebody off the roster because Greg Stroman did not return. And Greg
Yes.
Stroman got real NFL snaps last year and made plays. So, for as much as we could say, I don't know, it's a small victory, right? To be added back to the practice squad, and nobody will ever know that you were 58th, 59th, or 62nd in line because at the end of the day, if you're cut, you're cut. But, Nick, Greg is not somebody that the Bears seem to have in their future plans. Ready, at least for now, is. I think that there's a hat tip implied in that. Maybe we find out more about it next week in Hard Knocks. I don't know. But
Mhm.
it feels to me like the Bears agree. Ready was really good. But also, the league does not have the resources to add an 178-pound nickel corner to their roster, teach him their entire defense, and cross their fingers as a rookie. It's just a hard ask.
Well, well, also to your point earlier, Robert, if this was last year, the year before, maybe he makes it
Right.
because more of those guys are needed on kickoff and kick return. But now with this different thing, you need more muscle, more beef to be on those units. Um, so I actually have just something small that's going to be our first round opponent, which I'm sure we'll get more into. Um, so Tennessee, I was just looking at their roster now, after the cuts and stuff, and the Ernest Jones trade, which is bizarre. We can talk about that another time. They only have 4 corners on their roster right now. They made a trade for Ernest Jones, linebacker. They traded away a safety. They traded away a corner. They cut former first round pick corner in 2021 as well. Um, and they only have 4 on the roster. I've never heard of a team having 4 corners, Robert. I thought that was bizarre.
Neither have I. That is really, really weird. But it's a different league, ever so slightly. I think the kickoff thing is fun. Have we talked about this explicitly? What have you thought? We're now 4 Bears preseason games and an entire preseason into the new kickoff rule. What do you think about it?
I'm glad that it makes the kickoff relevant again. So that part of it I do enjoy, because as a coach, I like all of the different angles. I think there's ways that you can win. I mean, you only have to go down to Frank Beamer in Virginia Tech, and that's how he won football games. Is he won on special teams because other teams didn't care about him. So from that aspect, I do like it. I know some people don't because they care about fantasy football or whatever else. I care about winning football games, and you can win based on special teams. Heck, we have a Hall of Fame returner in Chicago. Like we know that's valid. I like that it's safe for players. It is more safe. I mean, I that's a part I hate the most is injuries. I'm very curious the strategy. It's harder to go east and west, I think, with this new return. I don't think we've seen all the teams pull out all of the stops. So we'll see a lot more, I think, in week 1, which I think is exciting. A whole new strategy to a game, a whole new dynamic. I'm all for it. I think it's going to be fun.
I'm going to throw something at you. It's an angle that I doubt you're going to see coming. So just strap in. It's not a
Oh boy.
tinfoil hat, but it's close.
We didn't have a tinfoil hat yet, so I'm glad we have one now.
So the way that I see it, I hear a lot of people use phrases like they're adults playing a children's game when it comes to a lot of different sports, right? You hear this about pretty much any sport that exists because people want to call any sport a children's game. Well, the more that we see safety concerns throughout the sport of football, I'm okay saying that football is a very adult game that is played by children, whereas every other adult sport is a reinventing of a child's game, which is okay, right? So basketball players that are 6'8" and move like LeBron can do things that children simply can't. That obviously there's changes. But the
Right.
main thing I'm looking at is I do think that there are some people that liked the old kickoff rule because it placed the focus on the offense and the defense. You're basically saying without saying, I'm okay if special teams don't affect the game because I'm okay with Patrick Mahomes being the reason that this, that, and the other happened. And I like my football weird, right? I like my football with the double doinks. I like it with a game flipping kickoff return. I like it with muffed punts. I love the fact that the Packers, after a season where their offense and their defense were quite good, lose a playoff game in a defensive grind fest because their 32nd ranked special teams unit makes another critical mistake at the end of that game against the 49ers. To me, this is the essence of football. It's 53 people, almost all of which actually have to do something. And if they mess it up, then it makes a massive impact. And if they make a play, it makes a massive impact. You and I are the podcast that talked up a punter. Of course I like the new kickoff rule, right? Like,
Well, I mean, that's what makes football such a different game. Like you can win a baseball playoff series if you have 2 stud pitchers, right? Because they're just going to keep rotating. You're going to get through it. Or basketball, you could have, 2 stars and you can get through it.
eight
Football, you have to have
finals in
everybody.
8 finals in a row, LeBron James made the NBA title game. Whether he
Mhm.
won it or not, separate question. But to your point, this is like there are a lot of other games where a single individual holds the key to the entire game.
Yep.
And
Yep.
while hockey certainly has a major argument for being a phenomenal team sport, I love the fact that in football, coaches can scheme a lot more than Other sports are because there's so many stoppages. And I think that there's something, to be honest with you, Nick, sickeningly funny. And that's what makes football great about the
Mhm.
idea that we might see, it's always possible, right? In the AFC, Josh Allen finally won up Patrick Mahomes. Definitively. It could easily happen, right? Where Pat and that offense they score 4 less points than the Bills do, except the Bills bring a kickoff back to the house.
Right.
And then, or not the Bills, the Chiefs bring a kickoff back to the house and beat them anyways, because that's football,
But that
right?
that was the Super Bowl, y'all. Like, if you go back and watch it, the Chiefs didn't win because of Patrick Mahomes. They won because their defense crushed, and not because Patrick Mahomes is bad, but,
Two
like, their
years ago,
offense didn't carry them.
2 years ago, a player who has been a pretty bad receiver in Sky Moore had a huge kickoff return at the right moment. And it was part of the reason Kansas City was able to win
Well
that
well,
Super Bowl.
Tony got
Yeah.
cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
So it makes football fun, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, most of these other sports, like yeah, sure, I've been following basketball a lot recently. The bottom of the Mavericks roster matters a lot less than whatever Luka Doncic needs to be happy, because that guy is literally going to win you a quarter of your regular season games by himself in
Mhm.
terms of the impact that he brings. But Torrey Taylor's 6 yard per punt difference between him and Trenton Gill, and that's underrating it because it could be closer to 9 yards per punt difference, might keep 3 touchdowns off the board over the course of the 2024 season. And
Mhm.
that could very well be
Did
2 full wins.
did you see Troy Taylor led the NFC in net punting
Yeah.
for preseason? Did you see who led the AFC?
No. Oh, it was
Trenton Gill.
Gill, wasn't
It
it?
was Trenton Gill.
Hey, some people just got to get cut to get motivated. Am I right?
There it is. That we resurrected his career. How about that?
But that's what we did. And then safety room was exactly as we expected it to, just to
Yep.
carry this thing to term. It's They've got some guys like you mentioned on the practice squad. Quindell's here, Tarvarius Moore is here, guys that you can call up if you need to, but you do not need to roll into an NFL football game with more than the 4 safeties that you have on the roster. And if anything, you really don't want to see Hicks if you don't have to.
Yeah, and the only thing we need to address, I mean, in terms of specialist, is so Patrick Scales is having back surgery, and from what I have heard, Robert, he's not going on IR to return. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It didn't sound like it, but Scott, I think it's Daly from Downers Grove. He's in the practice squad. He'll get promoted before week 1, and he's
Did
going to
you
be
say
our long
from
snapper.
Downers Grove?
Yep,
Is that a university?
it's a suburb of Chicago.
Thank you. I was like,
Sorry,
what
our
is
Chicago
this?
people will understand. You're down there in Texas, Robert. You don't know
No,
that
I
one, you know.
get it. I get it. As soon as you mentioned it, I was like, oh, I bet he's from Chicago. But I was just laughing. I was like, if this is another Bowling Green and I've never heard of it, then I need to have heard of it.
Kennesaw State.
Right? But at least you got a state or a tech in most
Well,
of those.
here's another one for the people out there. Sam Roberts, Northwest Missouri State.
not
They were a powerhouse, man. Late
not
90s,
North
early
Missouri State.
2000s.
Not South Missouri State.
No, not SEMO. Northwest Missouri State.
Then, of course, we've got our 2 specialists in Santos and Taylor.
Mm.
I'm really interested, by the way. I say that phrase a lot. I'm trying to think of another way to put this. Because instead of saying, like, I'm really interested, I used to say absolutely too often. Now it's I'm really interested every time I listen to the podcast back. I hear it way too often. You can fill up a little jar of nickels with how often I say that. Anyways, Santos has like an extra point bug that I don't understand. He's been money on field goals, so we haven't had to talk about it. But the extra point thing is weird, and I don't know what's going
I
on.
brought it up and someone was mad in the comments because he missed that one extra point and they said it was the snap or whatever. To me, you could have the ball down anyway. He should make an extra point almost no matter what.
I agree with you. I also think that I'm not mad at football's a results-based game. If I can be honest with you, Nick, I'm not mad about this until he misses a big kick, like
Yes.
even one. It's the sort of thing where it's like we have lost a game because of an extra point. Where I believe it was last year, the Bears ended up losing by 1 point, or it might have been 2022. I would have to go look it up, but I know there's one where they lost a game by 1 point that they
that was the Lions game. Remember when Justin had the
yes.
long run
Mhm.
and an extra point was missed and they lost 31-30?
Yes, exactly. I know there's one where the
Yep.
extra point really was the difference, but the overwhelming majority of the time, you'll take all of the three pointers to, even if it means you got to trade some of his misses out in the ones to keep what was a couple years ago I believe, franchise record kick make percentage. So Santos
Mhm.
has been really good on nearly any field goal that he attempts, but we've already talked, frankly, more about Cairo Santos than I think I expected.
Yeah. No, fine. And that's all I got. I mean, I think it's we're pleased. Honestly, I'm pleased with a lot of guys we got back on practice squad. I think I feel better about the D tackle room because they actually added at least more bodies in there. And I'm actually glad about the strategy. The only
Mhm.
ones would be Homer and Kramer, and I don't know that they're going to be on the roster the entire year.
My final thoughts are going to be very frank, very blunt, and if you've been following this podcast, you'll probably agree with me, Nick. You probably are going to agree with me. One of the most frustrating parts about the Bears Twitter civil war, as it's become known, that happened from, gosh, honestly, it started around November all the way through February and March, was that it meant that we did a lot of thinking about the Chicago Bears, like an
Mhm.
unhealthy amount of thinking about the Chicago Bears. And that means that when Caleb Williams was finally drafted, we had done so much thinking about what each side would be in terms of what those Bears outcomes would look like that, Nick, I'm just glad that finally we have the team in front of us that is almost to a man exactly the team we expected to see in May. I mean,
Yep.
this has been a long wait. I could
Yeah.
act like it's been this and that or the other, but most of the news happened around free agency when they traded for Keenan Allen, et cetera, et cetera. And while I certainly didn't expect a Darrell Taylor trade and I didn't expect Austin Booker to look this exciting, if we're talking about that top 30, top 35 players in your roster, those guys only barely make that group of guys I expect to contribute. But
Mhm.
they didn't make a massive splash trade. They still have all four of their day three picks in 2025. This is, plus health, the team we expected. And
Yep.
the only change is that instead of Ryan Bates at center, it's Coleman Shelton, which, as far as I'm concerned, is trading a C plus for a C plus. So
Right.
it doesn't make a difference.
Yep.
If anything, I'm glad that Shelton looks solid. That's a better outcome than both of them being poor, which is the outcome we've had for 2 years running now.
Exactly.
My final thought is that we are 10 ish more days away from finally getting a resolution to all the questions we've been asking for almost 150 days at this
Yes.
point. This has been a starving wait. And you can only dissect so much. I'm going to stream later this evening. Maybe you watched it, maybe you didn't, because I'll probably launch the podcast like tomorrow morning or something. But Nick, we can only just dissect so much. I've known
Yes.
this since June. July. What is the Waldron offense going to look like? I don't know. I can give you some guesses on what I think
Right.
he thinks, but I don't know.
Yep. Yeah.
What's Dexter going to look like? I don't know. What's the new defense going to look like? I have no idea. I can
Mhm.
I mean, even in the preseason they're blitzing more than they ever did last year, as if Matt Eberflus is aware and learned a lesson from 2023 that you can't just rock up dude on dude when you don't got dudes. And I
Yes.
love that. I love an element of self-awareness in your defensive coordination. And so I'm so stoked for this season. I think there's
Mhm.
so much fun that's about to happen this season, but I'm almost having to temper myself just to get through the work days because we're finally done. We can stop talking about distracting things and focus exclusively on the Tennessee Titans and what it's going
Yes.
to look like for the Chicago Bears to square them up and get that first win of the season. And Nick, I couldn't be more excited about it.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's the other part too is when you look at the roster and look at all the things that we really hoped for, the Bears made a lot of smart decisions here. And like the spots like we just talked about that are like weak, let's keep an extra guy or two just to make sure that they're not super weak throughout the season. Like everything on there, I'm like, okay, yep, this makes sense. Like I know almost every team has optimism, you know, but when you look at not Bears fans, you look at experts, you look at podcasts, whatever, they're like, Yeah, actually, I got the Bears as a wild card team this year. Yeah, I got the Bears as winning 10 games. I got, it's like it's not just us. And that I think is if Caleb's just average. And I just hope Bears fans, I've heard this multiple times. You can fan however you want to fan this year. Okay. I'm going to choose to be optimistic about my Bears and whatever. And Cade McNown and Rex Grossman and Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields, all of them actually have nothing to do with how Caleb Williams is or how he's going to be as a Bear. Caleb Williams and the teammates around him are going to be very different than what all those guys had. So to me, it doesn't matter. I also, Robert, I know you have this. I don't care what 2009 Green Bay did to Chicago because it doesn't matter. Okay. 2024 Bears are very, very different. And everything moving on from now, I think, is going to be it's going to be different. I just hope Bears fans are excited and optimistic about it because it's going to be a different brand of football.
I'll tell you, Nick, that one thing that has been driving me nuts since we talked about this Bears team has been people bringing up the history at inopportune times. I'm going to take one more pass and say that as much as I forgive, and I really do, I have real trouble forgetting. If you know me at all, anybody who knows me personally, you probably know that, Nick, I am a horrible grudge holder, and I don't want to be. I just have trouble forgetting. So, yeah, I remember all the times that RG3 said that Caleb Williams should try to be a Washington Commander. I remember all the times that JT O'Sullivan, I think I can remember the exact quote, said, well, when you look at the history of what's gone on there. And I'm like, JT, who cares about what Ryan Pace did? Who cares about what Lovie Smith and John Fox tried? What about that has any relevance
Right.
on this current
None.
team? I mean, and then I look at Caleb, man. What is the low band? What do you think? Put a name on it. Is the low band for Caleb's year this year, barring disaster? Okay. So you're not allowed to pick disaster. It goes pretty well. It's just not amazing. What's the name? Not even pretty well. Maybe just it's fine. Right?
Yeah. I would honestly, I think like Derek Carr.
The name I came with was rookie Kyler Murray. Not exactly the same. I get it. Not the same play
Mhm.
style, but a little too much athleticism, a lot of spectacular, sometimes at the expense of his offense, and about 4,000 total yards
Oh,
with
I thought I'm talking about like in terms of season. Like I'm thinking like quarterback 20 is going to be disappointing, but like that would be I think like the lowest bar I can imagine. So that's why I
disappointing.
picked Carr.
Right?
I mean,
I
because and honestly, like it could be as high as QB 6 or 7.
I agree. And that's the thing. What I'm mainly getting at, dude, is when I look at the potential for Caleb to be a Kyler Murray or a Derek Carr or much better than Desmond Ritter, right? I think to myself, this is the best quarterback the Bears have had since Jay. I mean, the moment you get that at all, you're
Mhm.
talking about a much better quarterback production wise than the Bears have had in quite some time. And so then you look at this
Mhm.
team, dude. This is a really good receiver core. I do think it gets overrated a little. Am I allowed to say that? Like we
Ooh.
we do have Keenan Allen, but it's like it's Keenan Allen at 31. We have Rome Odunze, but it's Rome in the early part of his career. We hope the two will interchange. You combine three receivers, three very good receivers into two very good receivers. That's the production I'm expecting. The production of two sickos, which is still a lot. I am not trying to get you to argue with me on that. It's
I
more
mean,
to
I mean,
say,
I mean, you're about to get me. I know we're trying to end the podcast, but I
I know.
don't. I think a lot of teams would love to trade spots with Chicago right
Of
now.
course, I don't want to pretend that that's not the case, right? This is where football, I think it's so messy, right? Is people go, well, the Bears receivers aren't as good as we think they are. And then out of the same mouth, I will tell you that a lot of the same dubiousness applies to the Vikings, who are the other one that people keep bringing up. Because as good as Jordan Addison is, are we sure? I mean,
Yep.
not only do we have problems off the field, but we have one season. And now we don't have Kirk throwing the ball. And Kirk has been underrated since the day he started taking professional snaps. So
Mhm.
is Sam Darnold going to get the same level of production out of Addison that Kirk
No.
drew out of Addison? We've just kind of forgotten that the entire offense disappeared the moment that Kirk got injured.
Mhm.
So anyways, the same dubiousness applies to all kinds of groups around the league. It's more to say, Nick, that this team, if Mitch was starting for it, is an exciting Bears team.
Yes.
But Mitch isn't starting for it.
No.
I mean, God forbid they have a really fun rookie that, lest we forget, the Bears spent the entire offseason legally cheating, legally installing the offense 3 months early. So, where's Caleb in the progression? What's going to happen? Dude, I don't know. But I'm stoked to see how this thing goes because a lot of dominoes fell really well. I thought that there was a very good chance, and I never talked about this because I didn't want to jinx it, that Keenan Allen would already have a soft tissue injury by now. And I mean, irony
Oh,
is
Robert.
he did miss practice today. But
He's not
like,
that soft. Come on,
it's
man.
not soft. Like when I say
Well,
soft
I'm not
tissue,
fragile, whatever you want to call it. Like he's not that fragile.
he's not a soft football player, but he might have those issues, just not on the injury report. Like, you know what I'm saying? He's 31, dude.
You're more worried about Keenan Allen's health than I am.
I never want to sound
And I
worried.
scouted Keenan Allen out of Cal. I've known him way longer, believe, than you have.
You have. I mean, Nick, never ever want to sound like I'm Chicken Little trying to tell anybody the sky is falling. It's more like, Nick, I think ever since I grew up with a wonderful father who believed that every year was the Bears' year, and then somehow we would go 8-8, and I'd go, I thought it was our year. What happened? I have made it my whole identity to try to help people see potential problems coming. Maybe they're not problems at all, right? And also help people try to figure out what to be excited about. So when it comes to Keenan Allen, he misses games. That's like it. He misses games and he's kind of slow, but he's been unbelievably productive. Unbelievably
He's
productive
a Hall of Famer.
since the day he met. He needs a signature win to be a Hall of Famer. The NFL is silly, but you know that's how it works, dude. Matt Stafford is probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame. Matt Stafford. Why is he going to end up being in the Hall of Fame? He got a ring. That's all it takes to change it, doesn't it?
He also gonna have crazy amount of stats because he started and chucked the ball like 700 times a year.
But Phillip may not make the Hall of Fame. Like, there's a chance Phillip Rivers, at the end of the day, just struggles to get in. Matt Stafford, similar argument until he won that ring, and then it changes. So to me, I don't know, Nick. This is
All right,
me.
all right, Keenan. If you're listening to this, Robert's saying you have to win a ring this year with the Bears. Okay,
I'm
cool.
saying
All right, Robert, we hear you.
that's what I'm saying. I was gonna build to it. You just took it from me. That what a statement win it would be. We saw Keenan Allen on Hard Knocks. How fun would it be to see Keenan Allen with his daughters, with his family, like confetti's pouring down? They've
Yeah,
got their
no, I agree. That
headset
would
on.
be and then he could retire. Who knows at that point?
Oh, that would be kind of sick.
Like right there, he's like done.
He just tells him, "I got nothing left to
Curtain
prove."
closes. Boop.
Here's okay. I want to give you the mic back because I did say a lot of things, but I do want to ask you this, Nick. If you got to choose today, okay? You get to choose today. Which of these two things sounds better to you? And commenters, you tell me. Option 1. Rome outright displaces Keenan Allen by the end of the season. Whether Keenan is happy with his role or not, that's a topic we could leave for another discussion. But Rome outright displaces Keenan Allen to the point where Keenan Allen feels like a luxury, but maybe not in a great way because the Bears run a lot of 12.
Yeah.
Or Keenan plays so well that he keeps Rome subdued. Which of these two sounds better to you? Actually, plays so well isn't fair. Rome displaces Keenan Allen, but displaces doesn't mean anything. Or Keenan Allen is still the wide receiver 2 going into week 17.
I would rather have Keenan, the wide receiver 2, going to week 17 because I believe that's going to actually help Rome's development too, learning from a guy doing well. Because I assume if Rome just displaces him, Keenan is like falling off the map. And I'd rather have 3 good receivers than 2 good receivers.
So I will tell you that my main thought as I look at this season is if Rome is going to be a top 10 receiver, and especially if Rome's going to be a good top 10 receiver, then I don't see a way he doesn't displace Keenan. He should start peaking around that
Mhm.
point, right? Like we've seen it. You know this. This is a big topic in fantasy recently that
Yep.
receivers don't need near as much development as we used to think
Not a
they did.
chance.
And
Yep.
so they hit the league, you give them a couple weeks, and then they just start pumping out
Yeah.
production
Yeah.
left and right and center. And
Yeah.
so I can't help looking at Roma Dunze, wondering out loud, okay, when is he really going to start moving? And once he
Mhm.
starts moving, what's going to happen? And
I mean,
so
that because of that, Robert, I mean, again, pie in the sky. There's a real chance that the Bears have 3 1,000-yard receivers this year. And that's not like I mean, I know you obviously Caleb has to do well, but because I think Rome is good, and I think Rome is gonna play in 2 wide receiver sets when Keenan's not out there. But also I think Keenan is just too good of a crafty vet to not get his. There's a chance all 3 get 1,000 yards.
there is, except the biggest thing that holds them back is that if all of three of them had 1,000 yards, Caleb probably threw for 43. And if Caleb threw for 43, Rome having 1,000 yards is not the biggest story. Like Caleb 2, Caleb
Yep.
3 is like your first three highlights on any Chicago
And
thing.
we're all okay with it.
We are. I mean, I think one of the most interesting pieces to this season that has yet to play out, and preseason did not help anything. If anything, it made it more confusing, is how the target distribution is going to work between $12 million Cole Kmet and $5 million Gerald Everett. Those two in particular, where I say
Yeah,
to myself, Waldron used a lot of tight ends. Waldron also used a lot of tight ends because Seattle's offensive line was so bad that
very bad.
you had to find some ways to disguise chips and get guys out and take
Mhm,
advantage of the fact that you basically kept using your tight ends as blockers so often that they kept
mhm.
getting forgotten. Why would you not throw to these guys? The
Right.
forgotten man is your favorite guy to throw to in an offense.
Mhm.
But I'm right there with you where I think all of their receivers have the potential to go for 1,000 yards each, but I don't know how this whole thing's gonna work. And that's the thing, dude. I'm exhausted of waiting. I'm dying to know.
Well,
Are we legit? Are we not legit?
right, right.
Like,
But I think having those 3 receivers, having the 2 tight ends, having Swift as a way better receiving back than what we've had is exactly what you need for a rookie quarterback with all of this potential because it's not like in past years when it's like, okay, Deontay Foreman's coming in, they're running the ball. This guy's coming out. Velas is in the
I
slot.
agree.
He's going to get a jet sweep. Like it's just not predictable, which is what you want. So then we're good. Everyone's going to capitalize
Nick,
on top of that.
Nick, I'm in a fantasy draft as we speak right now. You have 28 seconds to give me advice. I need a running back badly. I did not realize it auto drafted me Jamar Chase. I could draft a Dave Montgomery or DeAndre Swift, and I'm not going to draft Ramondre Stevenson in this case. Who do I take?
How deep are you?
This is like round 6.
I'd go Montgomery.
Montgomery, easy.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it. I was like, do I take Swift? Because this could be a sick time to take Swift.
Well,
But
because Montgomery's going to get a lot of rushing touchdowns,
he sure should, right?
and Gibbs already has a hammy. He
Mm-hmm.
should be okay, but he's already got a hammy. So
Demont in that Ben Johnson offense is a fantasy dog, and it's been
mhm.
fun watching him do that. But man, what an exciting season! Here's the where I think is best for me to end with you, my dude, because I want you to tell me because I'm dying to know today, having done probably a lot less research than you'll do over the next 10 days when I know you're going to get anxious about it, right? What do you think of the Titans?
I think the Titans defense is way more vulnerable than people want to talk about. I Simmons is good. Sweat is a rookie, one tech. They just drafted Ernest Jones. I don't. That seems weird to me. Kenneth Murray's not good. Harold Landry's not. Their pass rush isn't there. I think Snead's a bit overrated. Wouzier's already falling off. They have a decent nickel corner. I think Caleb throws for 300 yards the first game. I think that we're going to throw a lot on him. A lot of their team depends on how well Will Levis does, and he's very inconsistent. I think, honestly, right now, Caleb goes for 300 yards, and we get 2 turnovers from Will Levis. That's my prediction.
Okay, so first of all, barring the fact that you just predicted a blowout, which is the most Bears homer thing you could possibly do, I love it. I think it's not unrealistic. It's more like, okay, Nick, thank you for your awesome prediction. I'll tell you, I think the funniest part about the Titans is that the Titans are the perfect example. I really believe this of exactly the kind of team that we just don't and won't know anything about until the downs actually count because on in theory There's a lot of good football players on this team. In practice, a lot of them have major issues. Major
Mhm.
issues. Tony Pollard, nightmare. Dude, when he's healthy, is
Yep,
awesome.
yep.
Is he healthy? D Hop, but like on pace at one point to be the best receiver in football. He was one of the most dominant names in the game. Is he that guy still?
No,
Calvin Ridley, one of the most exciting players in football for a hot minute there. But last year didn't go that well.
right.
And then you have major problems on offensive line, and I really mean major problems on offensive line.
I
They're
mean, it's better. They signed Cushionberry, they got Latham, they got, Peter Skronsky, but also you have Will Levis who threw 4 touchdowns. Everyone's like, "Wow, first game 4 touchdowns." Then he threw 4 touchdowns over his last 4 games
We're also
total.
talking about a rookie tackle, which never goes that well. And he plays on the wrong side for where the Bears are going to match up Montez Sweat.
Right.
So their other one is going to have to stop the Bears' best and only one-on-one pass rusher,
Mhm.
like right out of the gate. And not to mention, I think JC Latham's pretty great, especially as a run blocker. His
Mhm.
power is exceptional. Funny thing though, the Bears now have 2 designated pass rushers that assault your feet, and that's where he's weakest.
Yep.
So
Yep.
could Darrell Taylor or Austin Booker maybe make some noise up against Latham in his first NFL game?
Yeah.
Dude, it would not be a
The
headline making story, right?
the biggest thing I think wrong for the Titans is your first game of the season on the road with a lot of new pieces and especially a new coaching staff. Like that's especially one that hasn't been a head coach before. Though that doesn't normally go well. A lot of new staffs don't do well at all, especially early in the season. So to me, I think there's just too much new. And I know there's new in Chicago as well, but that team was really good towards the end of last year. And if I'm going to lean one way, I'm going to lean a good defense. So to me, I think it's I don't I'm not predicting blowout. I think they could run on us. I like Pollard. I like Tajay Spears. Um, but I think it's tough to think that Will Levis is going to be consistent enough to pick apart, I think, a really good secondary.
It's going to be an unbelievably interesting test for the Bears because I think the Titans, compared to, let's take the 8 or 9 teams that they play before the bye week, I think the Titans are squarely in the middle of almost all of them. I don't think the Titans are that bad. The guys that they have, I would better describe this, Nick, as they have a lot of guys that are good, but people are going to act like they're great. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like Calvin Ridley can play. Calvin Ridley would be the best receiver on Carolina tomorrow. That's not
Hmm.
a question, if you ask me.
Hmm.
But is Tennessee good enough to make up for their deficiencies? And are the Bears as whole a team as you and I think they are?
Well,
Those are
well,
two
also,
completely separate questions. But if
yeah,
the latter's true, Tennessee's probably not good enough.
yeah, but then like someone like Snead, same thing, right? So Snead is fell off a little bit last year, and okay, you have L'Jarius Sneed, right? If he's a great corner, why is Kansas City letting him go? Right?
Right.
And this is just like, oh, okay, one of those teams they let the corner go as he's aging, and now he goes to a new team and he's going to be great again. I mean, all these guys are D Hop's what 32, 31, 32, Sneed's 27, 28, Ridley's 30. Like none of these guys are young, y'all. And going to a new team and now it's just going to mix and be perfect. I mean, we have questions if Keenan Allen's going to be well. That's one for us. They have multiple.
Oh, and the Bears generally have an insurance policy that's pretty solid. Don't get me wrong. It's easy to blow past the fact that I agree with you in general, especially when you're talking about Tennessee's linebackers and corners. I think their defensive line's pretty good. People are going to act like they're top 5, but they are top 10. There are a lot of defensive lines that I don't think have the juice that they do, but maybe that's partially because I think of Harold Landry is pretty dangerous. I don't know if you do, but
Nah,
uh,
I'm not there.
it's if you told me that the Bears traded for Harold Landry at the deadline, I would say that's pretty sweet. I like that move for them. But that's going all the way through this. Plus they got a third guy whose name escapes me, but when they mention the name I go, "Oh yeah, he could play too." But
Well,
so
I mean, Arden Key was the 50th
Key,
best edge last year. Landry was the 66th.
I think that sometimes PFF over penalizes
Now
certain
you could do
players.
that, but make your argument for him then.
I just know him as a dangerous speed rusher that has enough bend to get around the edge and punish people. That's it.
He's never been higher than 52nd on PFF's rankings.
Partially because I don't think he's going to play the run well, right? But are you looking at just exclusively pass rush grade, or are you looking at overall defensive grade?
I'm looking at overall. Let me look at his individual here as we do. I love that. I love that we're like, this podcast is almost done. We can't get out of this.
Oh, I mean,
His
people laugh about it every time. They always go
his
like,
best pass rush. Wow. Different. His best pass rush grade was last year 62.6
"That's it."
ever. His best run defense grade, he's had 3 that have been 64 or better.
Well, there you go. That's a great reminder of like
Hmm.
priors plus initial rookie take may not last
Yeah.
forever,
I mean,
right?
he's had double digit sacks last, well, he missed 2022, so 2021, 2023, but I don't think it's I'm not scared of it.
I'm not telling you to be terrified of the guy, right? You don't need to quake in your boots, especially because if there's one piece to the Bears preseason that I still think is almost flying underrated, it's that Caleb moved so well in the pocket that he neutralized a lot of pass rush opportunity for the teams that were against him. He'll be going up against much more dangerous rushers and, frankly, much better planned rush plans that'll likely try to test the
Oh, yeah.
Bears' ability to pick up blitzes. But,
Right.
dude, Nick, I'm going to say this I'm going to say this more than once. I'm not going to say this one time, but this is the perfect time to mention that if you get a free rusher home on Caleb, and to do so, you had to bring a +2 blitz, so a 6-man blitz. And in that 6-man blitz, that means you drop back, let's say like a 3 under 2 deep like coverage package behind it,
Mhm.
and Caleb steps through your rusher, you're toast.
Yeah.
Like those are the kinds of plays where so long as Caleb doesn't throw a pick or fumble, the taking 2 sacks to jimmy out 1 touchdown on a play like that
Worth it.
becomes plus EV.
Yep.
So we'll get there when we
Yeah.
get there.
The other part of this too, just real quick, I know there's the Ernest Jones trade. We can get big into this, but just in terms of I think this is a net positive for Chicago, y'all. So he goes to Tennessee right now, says, "Hey, I'm not holding out," gets traded for peanuts. It's really weird, by the way. Good player. He has to learn the defense and be all ready to go for week one. Now, remember the Bears traded for Khalil Mack, right? And he had the great week one. He's a lot better than Ernest Jones as a linebacker because Ernest Jones as a linebacker has to make all the defensive calls. That's what his role is. And so that's gonna be hard, I think, to do right away in week one. So I think that's actually good. While he makes their defense better, you're not going to get all of Ernest Jones there. And then week 4, Robert, you play the Rams, who just lost Ernest Jones. So I don't think they're going to be recovered to have a guy at his caliber. So I think it's a net positive because you were going to have to face a solid middle linebacker. And now I think you're going to face him not at his peak because he's in a new system, a new everything week 1.
I will truly end with this. I have nothing left to say after this, Nick. We started the off-season process, and I felt pretty good about where the Bears were. I actually felt very good. I was like, we're going to get Caleb Williams. We have an extra pick after that. Don't talk to me about the fact that Byron Murphy's playing very well in Seattle so far. I wouldn't trade him for Rome today if I had to. More to say that I knew the Bears were going to get a good player. And had they drafted Murphy at 9, doubt it. But if they would have, Nick, they still would have. There are a lot of good players that are in this league or that are in this rookie class. Then they trade for Keenan Allen. Then they add a couple other pieces like Coleman Shelton. Simple one to talk about, but an important one to talk about
Mhm.
because that's exactly the kind of player that becomes an extremely important part of your team. And then you keep going, and more dominoes start falling their way. Javon Dexter looks like he can play. Caleb looks like his movements translated. Rome is figuring it out. The defensive backs are popping off. And dude, Nick, I'll just say it this way. I am almost irrationally excited about the Bears, but every moment I think it's irrational, I look and I'm saying to myself, no, their schedule is a dream schedule.
Yep.
There a lot of dominoes have fallen their way. They're pretty healthy right now. In Chicago, you're taught to feel like by results, unfortunately, like the moment you start feeling this way, the shoe's about to drop. but it should have dropped a month ago. Like somebody should have gone down with
Yep.
some major injury, if that's the case. Maybe we're lucky enough, Nick, to be alive for the first legitimately surprisingly good season where things went better than they should have since 2018. And before 2018, what was it? 2006?
Yep.
Like how far back do you have to reach for something legit fun with less controversy than there should have been?
You're just hating on my childhood back then, Robert. I'm gonna end with this. This same hype, okay, y'all. If you want to feel a little bit of hype, okay, I'm gonna take a moment to shout out one of our friends. I mean, one of my friends. I'm sure Robert's as well. Uh, DWC, okay, the Windy City Productions at DWCPRODZ. Um, put out a hype video that Robert, I think, is the best hype video I've ever seen. I don't think it's just because it's the Bears. I think I talked to him, he put 15 hours into this, y'all.
Nice.
And I retweeted, I'm sure Robert did. Like it is, I mean, he said celebrities retweet it. Like it's worth it. It's got, obviously all the rookies, all the new guys, but the music, the videos in it, the quality. If you want to feel, like you listen to Robert's hype, you want to feel the hype and see it through a video. That is the best, I think, depiction of how we all feel as Bears fans, and that we don't have to worry about the shoe dropping. We can just enjoy the ride right now.
What a ride I hope it is, man. And the best part, no, I could sit here and cope. I could sit here and say, and the best part is if they come out flat against Tennessee, I can say, Caleb's a rookie, whatever. But I really don't expect it. I don't think he'll throw for 300 yards, dude. I'm going to be real with you. But 215 and a safe performance is totally on the table. And if he throws for 300 yards, so one of my favorite little statlets. It's barely a stat. It's more like an anecdote. Dude, I remember I went back because I was like, what does a normal rookie quarterback watch? So I turned on Justin Herbert's first game. Well, the one where he replaced
Tyrod Taylor,
Tyrod Taylor.
punctured lung.
You ever watched that game?
He threw some bombs.
He did, is what you remember. They all got dropped because he threw the ball too hard. He had 4 incompletions on deep ends that came from blowing guys' gloves off. But he did throw for 300 yards. Do you remember how he did it?
No.
He dropped the ball off to Austin Eckler for at least 140. He threw a screen to another receiver. I think it was like Mike Williams that clicked out another. He threw to Keenan Allen a bunch. Like it wasn't that hard because the team around him made noise. And as the quarterback, you get credit when you run the offense and your team makes noise. So if Caleb throws for 300, Nick, I bet you he has maybe 3 highlights that are like Caleb Williams highlights because people are forcing it. And I bet you that's just a huge day from DJ Moore against Ladarius Sneed. I bet that's a big day for Keenan Allen against the Titans slot guys. Like, you know what I'm saying? You flesh this thing out, and it's like, I bet you if Caleb's going to throw for 300 yards, that it's not the Caleb Williams air show. It's just the Bears look cohesive.
That's
And
okay though.
that's great. I'd say
That's
that's
still
even better.
300. I'm okay with it either way. That's how you build it.
It's how you should.
You make it easy for him.
I'm juiced up, man. I'm juiced up. You ready to wrap?
Yeah, man. I'm good.
Another short podcast runs an hour and 30 minutes.
Oh, dude,
Short.
we tried, man. We
Short.
tried.
Good stuff, dude. Well, thank you so much for listening. If you guys enjoy the show, please leave a pumpkin emoji. I think the pumpkin emoji is really funny. So I like seeing it every time. The flags were funny too. Like, surprise me. Put an emoji that makes me go, I know you heard this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would never see this emoji in the comment section.
Okay, here's my request. Okay, I want to know the random Bears quarterback that you've liked over the history. Okay, it can be random. It can be like Rick Meyer, Peter Tom Willis, Cordell Stewart, Moses Marino.
Who's yours? Give yours first.
I think an underrated quarterback is Shane Matthews.
That's super fair. Before my time. So I don't remember the Shane Matthews days. Mine is, I think that it will always end up forgotten that Nick Foles was a Bears quarterback. But of all the Bears quarterbacks I've watched, he made me mad less than a lot of them. where I mean, he was on a team that was falling apart at the seams. The coach lost any hair follicles that remained left on his bald head. Like, dude, Matt Nagy looked like one of those president before afters. Before, I thought he was a young coach. He leaves the Bears. He
Yeah.
looked old, dude. And so,
Yeah, yeah. Robert, all I'm saying, man, is there's so much more pain that you haven't had to deal with, man. You're lucky.
I know, I know. But we want to hear your random Bears quarterback that you kind of still stand for, even just a little bit. But we'll talk to you soon. Thank you guys so much. Rate us if you haven't. Tell your friend. Season's around the corner. It's around the corner. My young boy's going to turn, I'm going to have a birthday party immediately after the game ends. So hopefully it's not electric, Nick, because I'm disappointed that we're not going to go immediately. We have to wait a couple hours to
Okay.
do post game, but at least it means you get to watch the 3 p.m. slot of
Yeah.
football, which normally we pod right through.
I hope you're not like sad face through the party either.
I will live. We've got like 65 people coming. We invited a lot, and too many said yes.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
So,
whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't get an invite, Robert. Come
did you
on.
want to fly down from Wisconsin? You still
Yeah,
can.
I'm just saying you didn't give me an invite. You didn't
Party
give me an
September 8th.
opportunity.
So you got time. You got time in theory.
All right,
But
man. I'll check my mailbox.
it's not a flight affair. It's not a flight affair. But so, anyways, guys, gals, we'll catch you soon. Thanks so much for bearing with us.